All right, so we're joined now by Maryanne Hudson. For those of you who don't know, Maryanne used to work at the Raptor Center. What years were you at the Raptor Center?
I was at the Raptor Center until 2017, and I started there in 2004. So I was there for over a decade, a wonderful decade.
And what was your favorite part of working here at the Raptor Center, besides working with me?
Well, actually, that's what I was going to say. You know, I've known Andrew for a very long time. Andrew, you were a teenager when I met you.
True.
And lots of time has gone by since then. And meeting you has been one of the best parts of working at the Raptor Center. And watching you grow and become the responsible Raptor trainer you are has been very fulfilling. In addition to that, one of the best parts about working at the Raptor Center was seeing people's minds be changed when they would have a preconceived notion about a bird or about a habitat or just about the way nature works, and then learn differently by seeing your educational ambassadors up close. That was always great to see.
And so now you work for the Alabama Department of Natural Resources. What's your job out there?
That's right. I work for the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources in the wildlife section for the Wildlife and Freshwater Fisheries Division. I do a lot of outreach for them as well. I'm a conservation outreach specialist, so I help people understand all sorts of things they need to know about conservation efforts in Alabama.
All right, so this past 2 weeks or so, we've talked about kind of what do you do if you find a baby raptor, and you can bring it to, you can bring injured raptors to the vet school. But if it's a baby raptor, it's kind of just leave it alone, let nature take its course. But what about other injured wildlife? What can people do about injured wildlife as they see maybe a raccoon or a possum injured in the wild?
Well, it seems like these calls come in all year, but especially springtime. I've gotten 2 calls just today about birds, one of which was an uninjured young great horned owl. So as you probably guessed, the advice there was to put it back. Now, as far as other animals go, it's about time for them to start being born as well. I've gotten 3 calls today about baby rabbits that people are finding in their yards. And in almost 100% of those cases, the best thing to do is put that animal back, even if you touched it, and leave it alone and allow its parents to come and tend to it. Keep your cat or your dogs or your children away if necessary. Leave the area and let the animal's parents tend to it, because that's the best thing for them. Now, if the animal is injured, that's a different story. If it's injured, there are some permitted wildlife rehabilitators that can help. In the case of raptors, your facility, Auburn University Southeastern Raptor Center, is one of the places that can take injured raptors. And in other instances where we're talking about mammals or reptiles, there is a list online of permitted rehabilitators. Anyone can go to outdooralabama.com and search for current wildlife rehabilitators, and it'll show who's permitted and specializes in which different species.
Yeah, we've actually got a link to that on our website. If you go to our rehabilitation section on auburn.edu/raptor, we have a link to that Outdoor Alabama website. Now, we're one of 4 facilities that takes care of raptor in the state, correct?
That's right. And there really aren't that many facilities statewide. In order to rehabilitate wildlife, it's not just about having a permit, it's about having the space and the time and the financial and even emotional resources that it takes to work with injured, ill, and orphan wildlife. Facilities like yours sometimes have hundreds of animals come in every year, and it's a big investment of time, money, and other resources. If anyone is interested in wildlife rehabilitation, they can go to that same website, outdooralabama.com, and find out more about what it entails. And also, as I mentioned, that list of everyone who's currently permitted.
Now, the 4 raptor facilities in the state, correct me if I'm wrong, are going to be the Alabama Wildlife Center in Birmingham. So that's the one that's furthest north. Then us here in Auburn. And then there's 2 down on the coast. So what are those 2?
That's right. The Orange Beach Wildlife Center and the Environmental Studies Center in Mobile both take raptors as well. And oftentimes these places, like your facility, aren't necessarily able to travel to pick the animal up. And so that's another thing for the member of the public to understand, is that if they're interested in being a good Samaritan and taking that bird to a rescue facility, they may have to travel quite some distance in order to do that.
Right. Now, what about animals that have rabies? There's a couple more facilities that treat those. And is there any special precautions that people should take if they find a rabies vector animal?
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you would bring that up, because we actually received a directive just today from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regarding the handling of bats. Usually when we think about animals that have rabies, we worry about them giving it to us. And that is, in this state, raccoons, any type of canid, foxes, coyotes, and also bats and skunks that we worry the most about perhaps transmitting rabies unintentionally to the rescuer. However, with the disease that's currently making worldwide headlines, a type of coronavirus disease, this virus infects mammals as well, quite specifically perhaps bats. And so we don't want people to handle bats. We've said that forever because we didn't want people to get sick from touching bats, but now it's kind of the opposite. As far as we know, North American bats aren't infected by the disease that's making headlines. However, there's a chance, still being studied, that it could be transmitted from us to bats, which would then cause an issue with our North American bat species. And so it's very important for people to leave wildlife all alone all the time. Not only in case of disease transmission to us, but now we're finding wildlife professionals are studying it now. There may be risks of us passing some serious and long-lasting diseases to them, specifically in the case of bats.
Bats do a great job, though. We've got a lot of bats out here. Lots of bats in the stadium, as you know, when we're driving around in our golf carts. There's lots of bats in the stadium, flying around at those night games, catching and eating all those insects.
Yes, and bats have enough to worry about. We have white nose syndrome, which is a fungal disease here in Alabama, which causes some mortality in bats. And as you mentioned, they're extremely important for pest control. They do a lot of pest control work. They eat mosquitoes and other insects that damage our crops, and they're pests to us in general. So bats have a very important responsibility in the environment, and we don't want to inadvertently introduce any diseases to them. And so, of course, we don't want to catch any from them either. So that's another example of animals that need to be left alone. This time of year, people are raking their yards, especially people home. Some bats actually rest and hide under leaf litter naturally. That doesn't mean they're sick. That doesn't mean they're injured. They may just be resting and hiding in a shady, secluded place under leaves. And so just because you find an animal and are able to get your hands on it doesn't mean you should touch it, and doesn't even mean it necessarily needs help.
Now, with the baby raptors, what can you do if you find one of those? I know just the other day we shared a post about one of your game wardens putting one of those back.
That's right. And in that particular case, that owl had been held away from where it belonged for 2 whole weeks. But yet we were still able to reunite it with its parents, and it even had a sibling up in the tree. When you find baby raptors and other songbirds on the ground as well, it's important to remember they don't just wake up one morning and know how to fly. Sometimes it takes a week or more of time on the ground, clambering around in the trees, falling down into the bushes, climbing back up before these hawks and owls are able to fly. And in that time period, they're being tended to by their parents. You may not see their parents because your presence is going to spook their parents away. But if you leave that animal alone, leave it where it is, and leave the area, then the parents will feel secure and safe coming back and feeding their baby. Again, if that animal is not injured, the best thing to do is completely leave it alone, even if it can't fly yet. In the case of the rabbits, I got a few rabbit calls today. It's just that time of year. Cats are bringing them in, dogs are bringing them in. Protect those areas from your domestic pets and let the wildlife do what they need to do to survive. These animals are always better off in the hands or wings or paws of their own parents than they are in ours.
In a couple of weeks, there should be one rabbit that's actually pretty common around here in Alabama, though.
The Easter Bunny?
That's right.
Is that what you're thinking of? Yes,
that
exactly. Yes.
I'm excited about some candy deliveries.
Yeah, me too, actually. I don't know if it's going to hit my house this year, but we'll see.
I'm hoping that one of our eagles doesn't catch the Easter Bunny this year, though, like they did last year.
Yeah, that was tragic. It is definitely a risky place to deliver Easter eggs at your facility.
Now, speaking of golden eagles, we've got lots of Auburn fans that are watching these videos. So golden eagles are very popular. They're a favorite among some of our followers. And the state does some research on those golden eagles that come into Alabama. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Now, for over a century, bald eagles have become more and more plentiful. Our agency did some reintroduction efforts with bald eagles in the 1980s and 1990s, and now really Alabama residents can see bald eagles anywhere in our state. They're nesting in every county. However, golden eagles have historically been a rare sighting. But beginning in 2012, biologists with our agency started looking harder for these golden eagles, and on our wildlife management areas, putting out camera traps. Now, these again are just basically cameras that are focused on a bait site. And so road-killed deer were placed in these openings, kind of fields and wildlife openings, and the golden eagles were coming down and are still coming down into these open spaces to take advantage of that free meal. So once the cameras started picking up on these birds, we started realizing we perhaps have more golden eagles overwintering in Alabama than we thought. They're only here in the winter. They breed up north all the way up into Canada. But since 2012, we've gotten over 30,000 photos of golden eagles on our management areas, and plus members of the public send us golden eagle pictures as well. And we have put transmitters, cellular transmitters, on 19 different golden eagles and here in Alabama, which is very interesting because we're finding that some of these eagles return to the exact same field year after year. And so we've got a larger population than we once thought of overwintering golden eagles. However, as you know, this time of year in the springtime, our golden eagles are gone, but there's another bird that everybody thinks is a golden eagle, which is a juvenile bald eagle. So the juvenile bald eagles are brown all over. So they're the same size, big, strong, powerful, brownish raptors. And so people think they're seeing golden eagles, but most of the time, especially in the spring and summer, hunting around water, big open fields, these are juvenile bald eagles that people are seeing. Golden eagles, like you mentioned though, are a hot topic. There's more of them here overwintering in Alabama than we thought.
That's right. We get calls quite frequently of people telling us that they saw, two bald eagles flying over the lake with a golden, which goldens aren't going to be found near a lake usually since they're hunting land mammals. Now, we haven't started talking about our golden eagles yet, but Aria actually did come from Alabama. The War Eagle 8 was found here in Alabama. I believe one of the game wardens went out and actually caught her.
That's right. I was actually a turkey hunter about this time of year. It's turkey season right now. A turkey hunter called us about a grounded golden eagle that he had seen in the woods when he was turkey hunting. And one of our game wardens went and responded, and that officer took it to Auburn University. And your Raptor Center has taken excellent care of that bird, and now the rest is history. Now we've got Aria War Eagle 8.
That's right. We're glad he brought her here so that we can start training her. And that was in 2016 or 17, if I remember right. I'll have to look before we start talking about her. Now, if some of our people watching these videos want to support some of that golden eagle research, is there anything they can do?
Well, it's the perfect time of year to answer that question because there is a non-game wildlife tax checkoff on your state income tax forms. It's completely voluntary. Wildlife conservation doesn't get any general fund tax dollars from Alabama. And so our activities are funded by license sales and federal grants and monies that are made available by license sales, hunting licenses, for example. However, if anyone is interested in giving a little bit of extra cash to non-game wildlife research, when you're doing your state income taxes, check that box and indicate how much you want to contribute. It can be as little as $1 and contribute to that non-game wildlife tax checkoff fund. And that goes towards conservation of all those non-game species. And when I say non-game species, I'm talking about species that aren't hunted, like bald eagles, golden eagles, ospreys, and all the raptors, in addition to an assortment of songbirds and amphibians and reptiles and even some mammals.
Yeah, it's really important work. We're glad that the state's doing it. We unfortunately don't have time to be going up to North Alabama and trapping these golden eagles. We've got enough eagles here to take care of, and so we're glad that the state's doing some of that for us.
Yes, and again, that Aria War Eagle 8, she is just a really impressive specimen. That is a big bird. How much does she weigh?
She weighs in about 8 pounds right now.
Okay, that's a big bird. Everybody always thinks that eagles should weigh a lot more than they do, but 8 pounds is very big for a golden eagle. She's a big, powerful bird. And since she's not releasable, it's great that she's found a permanent educational home there at the Southeastern Raptor Center.
Now, she was found near Selma, Alabama. Where do the golden eagles traditionally in Alabama like to hang out?
Okay, yeah, she was found in Selma area, which is Dallas County. And golden eagles have been sighted all the way down into the southern Alabama counties. However, where we are having the most success in catching them frequently on camera and actually catching more of them physically with nets and putting transmitters on them before release is in northern Alabama. And so really Dallas County and above is where we would expect to see most of them, but we do have reports of them being much further south than that.
Well, that's awesome work. Do you have anything else you want to share with the people watching?
Well, we just want to encourage everybody to get outside and enjoy nature in these times of trying to stay isolated and away from other people. You can get outside and enjoy nature in your own backyard, but don't be surprised if you find baby animals in your own backyard, whether it's a hawk or an owl or a rabbit or a raccoon or a squirrel. The best thing to do is leave those animals alone, leave the area, and let their parents return and care for them.
Yeah, you're setting a good example of being outside right now, isolating yourself from everyone else. I'm unfortunately in my office, and I'm less than 6 feet away from one of my student workers, and so we're not doing a good job of that.
Well, we can all just do the best we can.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
War Eagle.
War Eagle.